Creating and maintaining a woman's sexual attraction is quite complex, and men having such a strong God-given biological sex drive find themselves in quite a dilemma when they get married and that frequency significantly drops or just goes away altogether. And so many of these men go out and start searching for answers, especially here on YouTube, and they're trying to figure out exactly what makes a woman tick. What causes a woman to be attracted to him? And more importantly, what causes a woman to stop being attracted to him? And because female attraction is so complex, at least compared to a man's, you will find quite a variety of opinions and advice, mostly from other men, covering how to handle relationship problems, including issues in the bedroom. And the advice and their conclusions are all delivered through their own bias, based upon their own personal experiences that they've had with women as a collective. And I've found that men often end up in these kind of groups, or think of them like the cliques that we had in high school. Only now it's not in person, but more so in a digital space. And depending upon which group or which space you are hanging out in, you will find quite a variety of advice. So let's talk about what kind of cliques or crowds that we can find. Well, some of these men are the never get married crowd. Then we have these guys saying don't even bother dating or even attempt to have sex with women at all. Then we have the women are disposable crowd, where the sole objective is primarily just a pump and dump. We also have the, well, I know that marriage is risky, but I still want to get married crowd. Then we have the, I'm married, but I'm miserable and dying a slow internal death crowd. And then we have the happily married crowd, where things seem to be going okay, pretty average. And then we have the happily married and sex is still super hot and steamy crowd. So these are just 7 different crowds that I have listed. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure the people in the comments are going to let me know what I missed, but they're all kind of gathering around in an effort to try and help men with their advice. But who should you listen to? Some of them, none of them, all of them? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. What do I mean? Well, I believe that there's things to be learned from everyone. While I don't agree with the conclusion of the marriage isn't worth it crowd. For instance, I had Rich Cooper on the podcast a little bit ago, and he believes that it's not smart for men to ever get married. But despite this conclusion, he really does have some great nuggets of wisdom that can help men operate better even in a marriage setting. So just because one person's experience isn't the same as yours, or they have reached a different conclusion than you have, doesn't mean that there's not something to be learned from them. But then you have the people where you agree with on the conclusion, but there may be some substantial differences between your points of view. And I think this was the case when I recently had on Karen Seitz of the Happy Wife School channel, where we both concluded that marriage is extremely valuable and that women should take more responsibility for their own happiness. But she takes a far harsher stance where women are always the problem. But in my mind, things are just not quite so black and white. So I do think it's wise to listen to a variety of people's opinions and their perspectives, while simultaneously evaluating and analyzing if what somebody is saying is true or if it's only true for them. Because truthfully, no one person gets everything right, and you're not going to agree 100% with anyone. And then you also have to look at, are they just spouting words, or do they actually live the life that you would like to have? If your goal is to get married or to stay married, but they're living a life where their primary goal is to take care of their own sexual desires and treat women as disposable, like those guys in the pump and dump crowd, that's probably not going to get you closer to your goal. It would be like seeking help on how to get a six-pack ab from an overweight personal trainer. They haven't even mastered the goal themselves. And they're out there trying to tell you guys how to accomplish something that they aren't even personally living. Because head knowledge is one thing. Like, it's not rocket science. Eat better, move more, increase your protein intake, drink more water, get more sleep. Like, you have to be living underneath a rock not to know the basics of how to be a healthy person. But living it requires a whole deeper level of belief system than merely just having the head knowledge. Because their body is going to be proof that what they're telling you is what they truly believe. And so for the men who want to have a successful marriage in every aspect, including in the bedroom, I don't think it's wise to put a whole lot of personal weight in a person's perspective where their goal is not the same as yours. Are you a married man who is stuck in a sexless marriage? Well, if so, you certainly are not alone. Listen, seducing a woman once is hard enough, but maintaining that desire for years, if not decades, is a whole different game. It's a game of knowledge and skill, and nobody teaches men how to do this. Not your parents, not society, and certainly not the woman that you're married to. I'm Monica Almaguer. I've been teaching thousands of men the specific tips, tools, and techniques to create a hot, steamy marriage on my podcast, Modern Marriage with Monica. But now I've taken all that information, those thousands of hours, and really have just distilled everything that you need to move the needle in your relationship with your wife into one simple course. And before you ask, no, your wife doesn't need to know or be on board. It requires nothing from her. In my course, How to Create and Maintain Long-Term Sexual Attraction, I give you all the information, all the tools, not just for right now, but for years. Let me just go over a couple of the things that you're going to learn in my course. The first thing is the 6 pillars of long-term attraction. We're going to go over the proper expectations. We're going to go over how women really work, polarity, the proper masculine and feminine dynamic. I've put together everything you need to create this environment in which your marriage and your sex life is not only just going to survive, but thrive. If this is something that you would like more information on, go ahead and hit that button below. Where their goal is not the same as yours. When it comes from a man who is jaded on women, on marriage, or who portrays women in an extremely negative light, or from a person who is unhappily married himself or herself. Sure, embracing the nuggets of wisdom here and there is helpful, but adopting these ideologies will not get you closer to your goal of a happy marriage, because embracing these ideologies ultimately will lead you away from your goal, and they serve merely to point a finger or to deflect the blame of the failure of the relationship on the other person. It kind of just abdicates and alleviates them from looking in the mirror that they played a role in the relationship's demise. And if they can get other men to agree with them, nah, man, it's not you. It's the women. They're all flawed. They then have that confirmation that it's not their fault, that the blame lays solely on her. But when it comes to relationships, there's nothing really that's ever one person's fault. Sure, the woman may have been awful. There's a whole lot of those out there. But are we just going to conveniently ignore and quietly sweep under the rug the fact that these guys entered the marriage voluntarily of their own volition? We don't live in a prearranged marriage society. And so instead of saying, hey guys, learn from my mistakes. I fucked up. I didn't vet my wife properly. I didn't get a prenup. They just tell themselves and they tell you, bro, don't do it. There's no good women out there. It's a rigged game. They're all defective. Or they will say, hey, if you have to have a woman, just go find yourself one overseas. Go find yourself a mail order bride. You can avoid the drama of the Western women this way. And I will say this can be an effective strategy if your physical looks are not your best feature. In fact, at my husband's work party, and this is a party where there's hundreds of people, but I was introduced to 2 gentlemen and their wives who in the last 6 months had gotten married. I think both of the ladies were Filipina. And let me just say, these women were way hotter than the dudes. This was a smart move on their part. I think they made a good decision there. But if you want that easy button where you go overseas, I think it would remove a lot of the barriers that come with dealing with Western women. But even going down that path does not necessarily mean that this woman is truly, genuinely attracted to you. Because these guys can't seriously be thinking like, oh, this woman is with me for me. They aren't really selecting them for real, genuine desire, but to get the Dodge out of their poor country and to elevate themselves into a better financial position. Isn't this the whole thing that you didn't like about Western women? How they're just using you for your resources? How are you to ensure that this isn't the case? You'll have to wait and see until she gets her permanent citizenship to find out what her true motivations and intentions were. And so these guys are trying to tell you how to master a game that they haven't personally mastered yet, or they're recommending that you opt out of the system altogether because of their personal failure. They played the game, they didn't like the result, and then determined that opting out was the only winnable situation. And because they couldn't win the game, they don't want you to win it either. Because if you do, and you win, and you have that amazing, hot, steaming marriage, that means that they actually have to look themselves in the mirror and realize that they played at least a role in the relationship's demise. So instead of these guys learning the lessons that they needed to learn, acquiring the information, the skills that could have helped them have a great relationship, things like establishing proper boundaries, operating as a properly framed man, and learning how women work, they opt out saying, no man, it's a rigged game, like it's some modern day Kobayashi Maru. And for those of you who aren't Star Trekkies, you might not know what that means. Essentially, that's a training exercise that they do in the TV series Star Trek, where the cadets are put into a no-win scenario. And it's an exercise where they're not testing their skills, rather they're testing their character and how they're going to handle the emotional toll of defeat. So are relationships with women truly unwinnable? And are all marriages actually doomed? Is this actually true? I guess it all depends on how you define truth. You want to know what my metric of truth is? For me, for something to be true, it means that it has to apply to everyone. For instance, gravity. Now, I know it's called the theory of gravity, but it fits my definition of truth, and here's why. We know that any time a person walks off a cliff, they're gonna fall. Every time. There's no exceptions. It's not like one time one person falls off and another person floats to the sky. So there are no exceptions. You walk off a cliff, you're going to fall. Therefore, gravity is true. And this is why I don't buy into the idea that salt increases blood pressure. Legal disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, but hear me out. Because if salt intake doesn't increase blood pressure for every single person, if it doesn't cause it to rise for every single one, then it can't be the true cause. And what's even more questionable about this whole thing is, like, if you ever go into an ambulance or you're admitted into the hospital, what's the first thing that they do? The first thing they do is give you saline, which is just salt water. So this is before any kind of underlying medical conditions are known. So there's quite a few people rolling in with high blood pressure and they're hooking them up to salt water. So this idea doesn't meet my truth metric. And for that, I'm grateful because I like to salt everything. And yes, my blood pressure is pristine. Let me know in the comments if there's any other kind of commonly held truths that you don't buy into. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. So we have to actually start using our brains when listening to advice and seeking truth to try to sparse out the information that actually takes us closer to our goal. And here's another thing that I don't think men consider is, has someone done it before? Even if it's only one person. Because if something is possible for even just one, it's possible for you as well. Sometimes we think something's not possible because we haven't personally done it yet, or we haven't personally had success with it yet. It used to be thought to be impossible for someone to run a mile under 4 minutes until Sir Roger Bannister did so on May 6th of 1954 with a time of 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. Once there was evidence from one person that that was possible, it only took 46 days for a new record to be broken. It only took 46 days for it to happen again with an even better time. And that was done by John Landy with a time of 3 minutes and 58 seconds. I'm sure John had that moment of clarity where he was like, wow, this is possible. And if it's possible for him, it is possible for me. And he moved forward with a new belief system. So if there's someone who is currently or in the past had success, that means it's possible for you as well. So the question is, are there any married couples out there who have been together for a relatively decent amount of time and who continue to be happy, including having a strong sex life? Is there even one? And that answer is yes. And if you don't know anyone personally, you're looking at one. So this idea that it's not possible, that women are all not worth it, that you should just abandon your desire for women, or abandon your desire to get married, or abandon your desire to have a strong and healthy sex life throughout your marriage, all that means is that you do not want to do the work required to figure out what it actually takes, to figure out what actually works. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that if you make that decision, but don't say it's not possible because you don't want to admit to yourself that you don't want to do the work required to figure out how to get it done. And guys, to be clear, I'm not discounting like the very real problems and obstacles and the very real pain that many of you are going through and suffering and enduring. I'm not minimizing that because some of the comments that I read and the stories that I read from you guys are truly heartbreaking. In fact, sometimes I get really pissed off at you guys that you aren't setting the proper boundaries with women and that you have refused to walk away because you guys deserve so much happiness. And if a woman doesn't see being married to you as the privilege that it is, I view that as like a literal crime because she's stealing a part or a portion of your life. So if your goal is to have a happy and successful marriage, you have to surround yourself physically and digitally with happily married people. Being happily married is not some rare thing. I know a ton of people personally who are out there killing it in their marriage. So don't let anyone tell you that it's not possible, because if it's doable for me and it's doable for them, it's doable for you. This simply means there's something you don't know. I would start by purging your social media feed from distractions that take away from your goal. Get in a community with men who are seeking the same goals. If you don't have one, join mine. I'll put the link in the description for you. The point is, you have to be able to see evidence of what is possible by surrounding yourself with the people who have already reached the place where you want to go, or at least are on the path to get there. And as a final note, make sure you're paying attention to your thoughts about women in general. And if you're already married, pay very close attention to the thoughts about your wife. Because if you're carrying a heart full of hate for women as a collective, you haven't yet to date had much success with them, or you're constantly thinking about how awful your wife is, you're never going to be able to reach your goal of a successful marriage by doing so. You will always see that person your mind tells you to see. You can instantly change your marriage by choosing to think differently of your wife. So what do you think? Am I too optimistic about marriage? Let me know in the comments. And if you've made it this far, you might as well hit that like and subscribe button. And make sure you stick around for this next video, which YouTube thinks you're going to really love. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.